Anchorage, Alaska is the northernmost large city in the United States. At over 280,000, it is home to roughly 40% of Alaska's population. While it is not that old of a city relatively speaking, after many decades of consistent growth, the city has seen its population growth stop in its tracks, at which point now it sits at a crossroads. This is what happened to Anchorage, Alaska. What would eventually become Anchorage, Alaska would be established slowly with the discovery of gold in the 1880s. Multiple gold rushes in the region over the following decade would bring thousands to the area. With the gold rushes would come a need for a railroad, and Anchorage would be established with it to help untap the untapped potential of Alaska. The Alaska Railroad and Anchorage would be established in 1914. With the home base of the railroad being in Anchorage, eventually the plan would be to connect it to the interior city of Fairbanks. Anchorage would start as just a tent city, and the railroad would take 9 years to be built. During those 9 years, Anchorage would slowly grow into a town. While this would bring in enough people to establish a decent-sized town, especially given the area that it was located in, the population would mostly level off in the low thousands for the next 20 or so years. However, it was in the 1940s and 50s, with the establishment of military bases in the area, that the city would explode into a major population center for the area. Given the city's location in a protected harbor between Asia and the lower 48 states, it made for an ideal spot for an expansion in military presence in the era of World War II and then the Cold War. With the military's expanded presence and opportunities, Anchorage's population would expand from just roughly 3,500 in 1940 to over 44,000 in 1960. The rails may have brought the town, but the military brought the city, along with which more formal infrastructure would come. More roads would be built in the city, and the city and state's transportation network would be connected with the lower 48 states via the Alcan Highway in the 1940s. Despite being hit by one of the most severe earthquakes ever measured on a Richter scale in world history in 1964, the city's growth would only continue. And not just through mining, lumber, and the military. Oil would become a major industry in the city. The fishery of Alaska would also be an important resource for the city and region as well. With the high military presence and the abundant resources in the state and region, growth would continue in high numbers, with a major increase in the 1970s when oil jobs would become plentiful in the area. The population would more than triple in this decade, and growth would remain strong in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s decades, with the city's population peaking in the 2010 census at just over 291,000, a number that cannot closely be matched for hundreds of miles around. While all seemed well, it would be from here on that the days of high growth would finally stall. How could this have happened in an era where almost no western cities stall or decline in population? This isn't the Rust Belt, nor is it tied to a similar economy to the Rust Belt. Well, a combination of several factors have begun to happen that limit, prohibit, and in some cases deter growth. First of all, the conditions that set a city up for growth are not very good in Anchorage. Crime is some of the highest in the United States, and the cost of living is among the highest in a large city in the US, heavily influenced by the location being so far away from the rest of the country. Though there are opportunities, neither of these two conditions encourage young people or families to come to the area. Many of these opportunities that do exist are subject to the high variability of natural resource industries. Drops in oil prices in the late 2010s and into the 2020s did not help the city either. In recent years, the once very strong Alaskan fishery has also experienced declines in halibut, snow, and king crab, all big exports for the region. Oil production in Alaska is subject heavily to government regulation as well. In the end, you have a city that is heavily subject to the resources around it, and of late, the city has pretty much flatlined in population growth. Industries such as tourism can help the city, but only mostly on a seasonal basis, as tourism sticks to mostly just the summer months. A city sitting at a crossroads in growth, it remains to be seen where Anchorage goes from here. Thank you for watching.